All right, so if I haven't met you, my name is Lucas. I live in Bellingham, which is about an hour or so south of here, in an hour and a half north of Seattle. I recently, well, somewhat recently, 3 years ago, I relocated to the Pacific Northwest. I was in K-12 in Dayton, Ohio. So a little bit about my context, because that'll help shape how you understand the decisions that I made during this process. We have clients around first of all, I work for a small financial firm. We manage mutual funds. So PII and that security layer is very heavy for where we are. But the weird part of it is all of our clients run Macs. So financial firm running all Mac hardware. We do virtualize Windows environments. And then we also have Ubuntu, Mac OS, if you can have a Mac OS server, and Windows servers. We are a very small team. There's 3 in the IT. That means we are tier 1 through 3. We have geographically diverse support responsibilities. We have an office in Bellingham, Washington, Henderson, Nevada, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So our 3-person team is responsible for support on all of those sites, which means when I leave for the day here, my calls start from Malaysia, from tomorrow. So that's fun. Again, I come from an area that's really highly regulated, which really translates to like anything that I do to note all the changes, monitor all the things, and then monitor the things that note the changes and monitor the other things. So just keep track of everything. The goal when I set out with this actually kind of came out of, I don't know who all was here last year has seen it. Mac Justice did a talk on GitLab and GitLab CI, and he's in the room. And that kind of got me thinking like, okay, Munki, Git, like what can I do here? Because what I really want to know is, I love the idea of Git, I love VCS, I love Munki. I want to know my changes. I want to know my historical snapshots. I want to be able to say to an auditor that user A had these applications at this point in time over this long range of months or years or whatever. I want to reuse as much infrastructure as I have. I don't want to recreate the wheel. Is it feasible? Can one person do it? And then stretch goals are looking at continuous integration, continuous deployment, build, test, deploy, which I was so thankful that Jessica went before me because I don't really have to rehash any of that. And she did an awesome explanation of those processes. So this is kind of how I started out. The process that I took, some of my opinions, I might rant a little. Definitely going to note some mistakes that I made, and maybe Q&A if we have time. It's pretty high level. It's not super technical. So yeah, be gentle, please. Thank you. If you're going to smack talk in the Slack channel, don't tag me after. Cool. Or if you want to criticize my package, third-party package solutions, you can do that in Slack. I just sound salty because it happened once. So, Munki repo. It's just a web server. Who's heard that before? I think even Greg says, hey, it's just a web server. So what that really tells me with Munki is to choose your own adventure. So some of us like to choose our adventures, and we like to do the supercomputer, or maybe mainframe hacker. But let's be honest, most of us have spent in the cave of time. So welcome to Munki. Cool. So I'm kind of acting on the assumption that you have Munki and you are deploying things with Munki in some form or facet to make this talk somewhat applicable to you. Yeah, so you can interact with Munki in a couple different ways. You can have auto package build your packages and import them. You could directly mess with your plist files in terminal, or you could use a you could use a GUI, Munki admin, or you could Munki web admin if that's still a thing. I don't know. You might have one Munki server. You might have multiple. It gets kind of confusing about where changes are happening, who's making changes, what's going on. Which is why I really like the idea of Git, because we can see when changes happen, we can have a record, have version control, and we have them stored in a third location. So when we say Munki is just, it's just a web server, it is. It's just a directory of files on the server side that store both all of the settings around the applications, manifests, catalogs, and things like that. So when you start talking about Git and you realize, oh, those are all just flat files that you can barely see on this screen, that's easy. Wow. Git add repo, done. Not quite. What about packages? So packages get a little complicated because they're Git no likey packages. So when I started this process out, there was a couple different options floating around. There was Git fat, and then I think was Git annex a thing, and then but I ended up going with Git LFS. So the large file system and service system. So basically, what it does is it creates a pointer file inside of Git that points to the binary, the package, which is cool. Because now you can actually track these packages inside of Git, which is awesome. So now you literally have your entire, you just flat files and packages. You just tracked your entire Munki repository. So this is kind of my lessons learned from using Git LFS. Caching, this was huge. This was probably my biggest gotcha because I spun this up in a test environment, and I was like, oh, I'm going to get started with my Munki repo, and I'm going to add everything into Git LFS, and then I'm going to push it up to what I used, which is GitLab. But what I did not realize is on my virtual machine that Git LFS caches everything that it pushes up to the web server. So now you have a repo. Well, that caches that locally, which multiplies the internal storage of your system by what? 2. So I killed 3 VMs that way before I realized, hey, wait a minute, there's a .git file folder with caching going on. So that was like a caveat. And then on GitLab, you can realize that, oh, the receiving server itself is also caching the content before it then moves it to its end location. So that was a big caveat. You can see, you can read the documentation on Git LFS. I'm talking specifically GitLab because that's just kind of where I ended up. Pruning. So in Git, it's really great because when you push stuff up and it doesn't exist, you can get rid of the old versions. Git LFS, as of its current rev, it just is always there. So you can do a git prune, and if it doesn't exist on the server and it exists locally, Git LFS prune will get rid of the files on your machine. However, as of right now, there is no way to actually prune a remote repository of packages that are not in use, that I'm aware of that's not a third-party app. Asterisk, asterisk. Another caveat is that you'll have to use HTTP authentication when pushing and pulling from the repo. I believe you might be able to override it with a certificate. And then revisioning. Any change to a package, you're obviously going to have to rewrite the package. And then tracking. Tracking is awesome, except for packages, because, well, the package change version, you're not going to be able to see inside of it to see what actually changed in Git LFS. Git LFS is just the mechanism to move that around. So these two together make a really cool team and give you the ability to track what's going on in Munki. And so let's take a look at that. So let's go back here where we talked about a little bit about how we make changes to a Munki repository. Just keep in mind, like, I'm coming at this from, it's me. I manage our Munki repository. Somebody else might get into it and help. So this is very much a small business kind of aspect, but everybody loves the GUI. If you can go in and open a GUI to edit something, let's do it. But a little known thing is, well, maybe it's not little known. It took me forever to figure it out. But Munki admin has the option to run scripts based off of manifest post save, package info post save, repository post save. And what you can do is you can add in whatever scripts there. So what you can do is you can throw this. I found it out and about. And it'll actually do the git commits for you when you change it through Munki admin. So you edit Munki admin, you use Munki admin as you were doing before, but then once you commit it and push it up, you get these nice little history of who changed what, when. Awesome. So now you have somewhat of an easy way. So you're not really changing your workflow if you're already using Munki admin, but you're getting the added bonus of having everything tracked in Git, and you're getting more detailed notes. You can get crazy if you want. Facebook, the ITCP, Facebook has this auto package tools, which is an auto package wrapper. And this is like the next level. So what it does is it'll run auto package for you. When it runs auto package, it runs every single recipe as its own run. And what it'll do is it'll actually, if it finds a new package, it'll branch, create a new branch, create a merge request for that package. And then it will sit there branched until you go into your Git repository and merge that branch back into master and then push it out. Now, a lot of people are like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. But I think something that I heard Alistair hinting at earlier was the fact that this gives you the ability that my changes that I make to our repository have to be approved by another member of the team. before it gets pushed out to production. This adds both tracking and accountability to who gets to manage the repo, how it gets to production, things like that, which is really great. But it might be overkill for you or what you're required to do. It's all just kind of, again, up to context. But it's a great tool and it's there, and it works. Or you could build your own wrapper. That's an option too. Here's a kind of proof of concept one that I use too. So what it'll do is it uses, I think Sean Kaiser made an email, basically a wrapper that does an email, does a diff, sends an email, but I just kind of wrapped it into Slack. So now it posts to Slack if there's new packages or there's not new packages. So there's a lot of different ways you can get all of this information tracked by Git better. There's also, I believe it says it's a proof of concept, but you can change your actual Munki repo inside your Munki tools to a Git file repo rather than just leaving it a file repo, which when you make catalogs and things will automatically make commits and things to your Munki repo for you, which is really awesome. Because the less you have to manually git add, git commit through this whole process, the easier it makes you, but you get the added benefit of the tracking. So I mentioned that I use GitLab. GitLab's interesting because it's Mac everybody, Mac Justice. Because it's a Git repo, but it also has CI/CD tools built into it. They have a community edition, which is free to download, and then they have an enterprise edition, which is paid. I only have ever used the community edition. So Jessica did an awesome job talking about pipelines and build processes and things. This is right off GitLab's website and how they, kind of shaped a nice workflow. So one thing that I want to talk about is this in the CI pipeline when you're actually doing tests and things. A lot of people think about that part of the process as something relating to like you're developing an application, you're developing a website, and you need to test dependencies, whatever. But I think it's completely applicable to think of it as something that us as Mac admins who use Munki should be doing. After all, it's a web server. So I'm going to talk about runners for a second. So GitLab has runners, and runners are agents that run on other operating systems that can do tasks for you. So you can have a runner installed on an 1804, 1604 box. You can also have a Docker runner. So you could have basically any code or test that you want to run executed in whatever shell you want to run them in can pretty much be done. You can have a macOS runner that does things locally in the macOS shell, or you can have Docker running on a Mac, and it can do a Docker in Docker run, where it will actually run tests in Docker, through Docker in Docker. So what it'll do is keep those tests completely isolated if you're doing very minor checks. There is a Kubernetes runner out there, integration that you can use as a runner, or you can do it on Windows. These little runners let you run tests and do various things, basically whatever you tell it to. So what I did is I kind of chopped it down. So I kind of made it look like this. We'll just say I have my code. What's my code? Well, my code's any changes I make to the Munki repo. So the structure is code. I'm going to commit that. I want to test it. I want to build it, and I want to ship it. So let's take a look at this YAML file. This is a GitLab's CI YAML file. So basically there I did it at the top, test, build, deploy. So I want to give a shout out to Rick Heil. I bugged him a lot about this. He has a really good talk that he did at Penn State Mac admins. He's on Slack as Refreshing Apathy. He had this little ditty up here where he took part of the make catalogs from Munki and made it into a Munki linter.py. And what it does is it'll run through a Munki repository and check to make sure each application is assigned to something. It has an icon. It has an admin note. It does that. So I treat that as my test. Before I even push my repository out, it gets linted. It goes through and runs these checks. And then I get back on the pipeline if it meets those satisfactory standards. After that is done, it gets sent over to an actual make catalog. So I think I bugged Mac, again, about this a little bit. Shout out to Mac. He's at Mac Justice on Slack. About getting this worked out where I actually have make catalogs run not on a Mac. So everything you're seeing here is on a 1604 VM. I don't do any of this on a Mac because I can virtualize 1604 way easier than I can do it on a Mac. So I actually have Python 2.7 that I had to go and grab. And then I actually go out and grab the 2.8 version, if you notice, of make catalogs because of certain deps that happen later on to do this. So it actually runs on a runner. We call it runner 01. It's just a 1604 runner. And it keeps the catalogs that it makes, and then we deploy it. So the deploy is actually a S3 command, and then it gets pushed up to an S3 bucket. So now we've just deployed our repo to an S3 instance. We checked it, we linted it, we made the catalogs, kept the catalogs, and then shipped them off to its final resting place. So we're back to this. So yeah, we linted it, we made the catalogs, and we sent it to S3 or whatever. You could send it to whatever cloud hosting platform you wanted. So we went from something that kind of looked like this. No one remembers this. To something that kind of looks like this, which is really awesome because it gives us the opportunity to develop locally, track our changes locally, also push those changes up. Those changes get stored, they're auditable, packages are trackable, they get checked before they get deployed, but also extends it. So I am a small shop, but shops that are larger than mine, now you have the ability for any developer to clone the repository, partially, make changes and commit it back. It also gives you the opportunity to protect branches. You can protect the master branch. You can say, hey, merge requests have to be done a certain way. They have to be approved by somebody else on the team, stuff like that. Like, it might get tiring every time Chrome gets deployed, but it's all kind of, again, it's all kind of about context. It's all what you need to do. It also gives us the opportunity to catch stuff when it breaks, before it breaks. So this is like, I'm going to go back a slide. This is like a really simplified version of how I see the potential of a system like this going. Like, yeah, you can monkey lint and you can you make your catalogs and stuff, but once all of your information is tracked, and once you have that information, you're no longer dependent on your local hardware. Like, your local laptop could blow up. It doesn't matter. The repo's sitting out, it's tracked in Git, or it's out on S3. It's just a lot more stable, and it's a lot more, helps you cover your butt too. If you do make a mistake, you can easily revert back to a previous commit. So, some final thoughts. I love Munki. Munki is great. Munki in Git is great. Yeah, LFS is okay. It's getting there. It's come a long way. It has its caveats. You have options. I talked about GitLab. There's a lot of CI/CD tools out there. There's a lot of web hosting services out there. There's a lot of different options. I used GitLab because it's what I had. It was free. I could download it, get it up and running. It was good. Remember, Munki's just a web server. But Munki and CI/CD is a game changer because the more we stop thinking about like pushing a Munki repo to a Mac Mini, and the more we start treating it like a web server, both security posture, tracking changes, testing, auditing, the better off we're going to be in the long run, and the more flexible we're going to be. So like the example that I gave, S3 bucket, well, I'm actually fronting the S3 bucket with CloudFront, which will geographically disperse the repo over several locations, because that's what we need in our context. We need those to be available in Malaysia, or Singapore, I think is where the data center is. But we don't want to shove Microsoft Office updates through the VPN tunnel. So start thinking about it differently. And Git Lab, but Git specifically, is an incredible tool to keep track of both what you're doing, what your team's doing, and then integrate those together. So yeah.